dreams, manifestation, feeling your feelings, psychic awareness, feminine awakening, interdependence, bringing the luxury back into spirituality, the deepest friendships you could ever want, conflict resolution, the healthy masculine, the divine feminine. Welcome to High Havingness. Enjoy your journey.
I am here with a dear sister live in person, Annalise. Do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners?
I will, yes. Well, hi. My name is Annalise Jyoti. I'm a fertility awareness educator, a holistic reproductive health care practitioner, and a yoga teacher. So I work with all cyclical beings around natural birth control, conscious conception, cyclical living, healing menstrual dysfunction and dis-ease, and yoga.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you to be here.
It's good stuff.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with this podcast. Today we're going to be talking about cyclical living, the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, fertility awareness, and our cervix as the portal to connecting to our grounding. And we're also drinking cacao.
We are also drinking cacao. Ceremonial cacao from Guatemala.
Tell us a little bit more about this cacao.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just go in because I love this podcast to be fun and fresh, and we know what's going on here.
Yeah.
But I don't think they do.
Cacao is the plant that chocolate comes from. It grows mostly in humid climates, so it's all around Central and South America, parts of India, parts of Africa, places closer to the equator. It is a big pod with seeds and fruit, and you take the beans out from the fruit, you ferment them, you dry them, you roast them, you make them into a powder, and then we've made them into a delicious drink. It's really beautiful, heart-opening, grounding, feminine energy. It's also super rich in magnesium as well as other minerals, but especially as we're going to be talking about the menstrual cycle, magnesium is so key, and so many people are deficient in it without knowing it. So adding in something like a cup of high-quality ceremonial cacao during your bleed or during your luteal phase, which we'll talk about later, can be so incredibly helpful for balancing your hormones and helping you get back into your body.
Yeah, since hanging out with you, you know that I take magnesium now.
You do know.
And I drink cacao.
And how has taking magnesium improved your cycles?
I don't really experience such a deep despair during my luteal drop.
It's a big change.
Yeah. It is. It definitely feels more regulated, and it's like I honestly am about to bleed in the next. I can feel it actually through my chest. In the next couple of days, and I haven't really been having. I've still had energy, which has been nice. But yeah, let's jump right into cyclical living.
Yeah.
Let's cheers these freaking cacaos.
Salud. All right.
Okay.
Well, I think it's important to note that, as people born into female bodies, into a world created mostly by people in male bodies, there are so many structures at play that are not actually in support of our natural cycles of our bodies. There are so many outright plain and subtle ways that we are put down. So like the modern workday of 9 to 5, of being expected to show up every day, be the same level of productive and friendly, and just being expected to show up the same way every day. That's very male energy. Their hormonal cycle is a 24-hour cycle, so they do start over in the morning. Our hormonal cycle as bleeding beings is longer. So it goes, anywhere in between 25 and 35 days for someone with a regular cycle. And then for those who are experiencing irregular cycles, it's longer than that. That's how long it takes our hormones to go through their full cycle. And so in that cycle, there are 4 phases. Now, all these phases lead into one another. So we start with the first day is our bleed. It's that shedding of the endometrial wall. Our estrogen, our progesterone, our testosterone are all at their lowest levels. So this is often a time when you feel just a little more tired, a little more internal naturally. You may not be as motivated to go out and do as much as you normally do. But this is an incredibly potent psychic time because as the walls of the endometrium are shedding, it's opening you up. The cervix also, which we'll talk about later, is opening to allow the passage of menstrual blood.
Hold on. There was a hawk that just flew over the house. Okay.
The cervix is open, very psychic time. And I think, when people think of the menstrual cycle, this is normally the only part they think of, the part that you're actually bleeding. This is what people normally refer to as their menstrual cycle, even though there's a whole hormonal cascade happening in the times in between your bleeds. This is also, like, we all have so many beliefs ingrained in us about menstruation. So many people believe that it is dirty, that it is unsafe, that it is taboo, that it shouldn't be talked about. And so much of my work is just reminding people that no, this is the most natural thing in the world. There's nothing dirty about this. Menstrual blood is incredibly clean. It's, you can use it. People use it as a face mask. People paint with it. You can water it down and give it to your plants. It's very nutrient rich. And it really is like your body just shedding this into endometrium so that it can build it up again throughout the cycle. So that should an egg ever get fertilized and implant, that it has the healthiest blood available to it, the freshest blood available to it. The other thing that comes up for people around menstruation is pain. For too many people, they experience pain, either menstrual cramps, lower back pain, menstrual migraines. There's a lot of different things that can show up, or very heavy bleeding. And unfortunately, because people aren't really taught what is normal, they believe that this is normal. That pain, that heavy, heavy bleeding, that, needing to take like a bunch of Advil is normal. And that's just what you got to do. And really, your period is not supposed to be painful. Menstruation is not a curse. It's not supposed to hurt you. We experience pain for a few reasons. Sometimes it can be our body trying to get our attention. It's like, hey, pay attention to us. Pay attention to me. It also can be a reflection of how we relate to our femininity and what we believe about feminine energy. I see you smiling there. So if we're rejecting our femininity, and not just like, being girly, but like that creatrix embodied menstrual being, if we're rejecting that, it can show up as our body in pain. Our body's like, no, I want to be accepted. I want to be loved by you. Like, pay attention to me. Sometimes it can have to do with excess estrogen. So we are constantly exposed to these things called xenoestrogens. So these are fake estrogens that are in our makeup, our cleaning supplies. They're just, in laundry detergents, they are just in things. And so this can lead to an excess of estrogen, which would promote heavy bleeding, blood clotting, pain, a lot of things. So switching to a low tox lifestyle can be helpful. Some people have genetic components. So if your mother, if your female family members have experienced similar bleeding patterns, then there can be, on the psychic level, ancestral wounds. On the physical level, sometimes there are physicalities. So if that's you, please reach out to me or another practitioner, and I'm happy to walk you through that process. And then there's other physicalities that may not be genetic, like endometriosis, adenomyosis. All of those are very real, and there are natural ways to heal it and integrate. And so much of the time, menstruation is a reminder of how incredibly powerful we are.
Mm. Mm.
And if you're fighting against that power,
Oh.
your body's going to remind you.
Just how powerful it can be
Mhm.
in creation
Mhm.
of pain.
And before I move on to the next phase of the menstrual cycle, I'm curious, do you want to share your experience with painful periods?
I do. Yeah. So as somebody who was I'm gonna choose my words to be neutral here. As somebody who was put on birth control really young by my own choice because I was sexually active, I was only on it for about a year, but I was a really late bloomer. I didn't get my period until I was like 15, almost 16 years old.
And when did you on birth control?
When I was 17.
Okay, yeah.
And so it really, really messed up my cycle. And I always had these horrible, painful periods. And I went to the doctor and they had, this was, oh my gosh, 15 years ago. And so I was like, okay, like what's wrong with me? And they're like, oh, it could be endometriosis. So I took that picture into my head and be like, oh, I have endo. And so what I decided in that moment, when somebody of authority told me that this could be a possibility, was that I already had it and that I was infertile. A fun thing that I had to break down.
That's what they tell you.
Yep. There's infertility. You need to get on this birth control. This will help it. And I'm like, actually, it didn't. Let's talk about my periods being extremely painful and how that started to shift for me is when I started to when I met my embodiment coach. And she started to teach me about the menstrual blood and the menstrual mysteries, and I was painting blood on my forehead and giving my blood to the earth and really being in reverence to this time because I would have these massive psychic downloads. And I also want to talk to like the privilege that I had to slow down during my menstrual cycle. I know a lot of women don't have that privilege. So I had this privilege because I was married at the time and supported financially to really slow during my menstrual. And that just awakened so much for me. I remember that I had a very like one last period that was so deeply painful. And on the energetic side, when we're shedding the month before. So anything that you are kind of bypassing is going to kind of come out in that cycle, anything that you're clearing. And so I had one really, really horrible last period. And I remember asking my spirit guides, I was working with the angels at the time, and they're like, this is just the last one to clear. And I was like, this sucks. So I'll say that for me, periods aren't painless now, but there's a teeny bit of discomfort, but I'm so aware of my body that I know when it's coming. And there's like 3 to 4 cramps. And I'm like, oh, okay, that was a big one.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm doing deep, 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 deep healing work and we're releasing some clots or some very old wounding. But yeah, my periods are easy now and I'm obsessed with them.
That's huge.
It is.
That's huge.
It
and like
is.
for anyone listening who's like having painful periods, like that can be so hard to even imagine.
Yeah.
Like if you've had these awful, painful periods for like a majority of your life, that like it can be really disparaging and like it's easy to lose hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate your discomfort during your bleed before?
Oh. Like an 8 or a 9.
It's high.
It was really intense.
Where's it at now?
It's like a 1. I'm obsessed with my bleed. The thing is that I've embraced it. I've come towards it. I've been with it. I've learned how to be embodied. It's really important that we're present with that release. So that, and it also has to do a lot with the nervous system. Are we gripping? If our cervix is opening and we're gripping it to be closed and we're not ready to release, like cramping is going to happen. But let's get into our next phase of the cycle.
Real quick, 2 things I want to mention before we do that. For anyone who doesn't know what endometriosis is, it is where the lining of the endometrium, which normally sheds off, grows outside of the endometrium. So sometimes it's on the fallopian tube, sometimes it's on the bowels, and most often it results in really painful cramping and discomfort during your bleed. The other note that I wanted to say is you started your period at 15, 16, and then were put on birth control at 17. Menses is named for your first bleed, or menarche, not menses, excuse me. It takes normally 3 years at least for your endocrine system to become mature enough after menarche to have a normal, healthy cycle. So when we're put on hormonal birth control before those 3 years are up, it does create a disruption. And this isn't something that's taught in medical school. So your doctor doesn't know that. That's not information that they're functioning off of. And we're all doing the best that we can with the level of awareness and information that we have. And yes, thank you for speaking to the privilege to slow down, like to embrace the cycle. Like so many people are just busy. And so if you're experiencing painful or discomfort during your bleed, my advice is to create moments of relaxation and release. Like even if it's 5 minutes of mindful belly breathing in your car on your break, like just something really to honor and embrace that energy.
Thank you for speaking to that. I felt a resonance in my body for that little 17-year-old girl who was like, okay, I'm having sex, I don't want to get pregnant. And I felt that so deeply. And also, yeah, when you're bleeding, the first step for me was accepting that it's okay to be tired.
Yeah.
It's okay not to have the energy. And I know that you still might have obligations and things that you're committed to, but it's an invitation that you don't need to give 110. You can scale it to 80. And I promise you'll still get what you need to get done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my little 16-year-old self is like, I feel so validated and seen. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And all the other like, I just like the energy of it. I just felt so open. Like all of the other girls who are transitioning into womanhood are going to have this information.
3 years.
3 years. And I'm thinking about all of my friends' daughters right now. And I'm like, yeah.
And everything when you're choosing contraception is about pros and cons. Sure. What's going to work for you individually. So not everyone will wait that 3-year period, and that's okay. We're making informed decisions here.
Yeah.
So we have 4 phases of the cycle that we're going to go over, and they correlate with the seasons of the earth. So menstruation is our inner winter. So this is a time when we have less energy, like there's less, our days are shorter during winter. This is normal. The earth goes through winter. And after winter comes spring. Spring is what's called the follicular phase. So this is when the follicles in our ovary start to develop. These follicles start to produce estrogen. And so the whole menstrual cycle is a conversation between the brain and the ovaries. There's always hormones being circulated and communicating. So technically, menstruation starts in our brain, sending a signal down to the ovaries. And so as what's called follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, is sent from our brain down to our ovaries, the follicles develop, this produces estrogen, and then eventually estrogen will send a signal back up to the brain, which will trigger the next phase, which I won't go into yet, but that's ovulation. So the follicular phase is our inner spring. So estrogen really starts to rise here. And estrogen, for a lot of people, not everyone, but for a lot of people, is associated with this rise in energy, in optimism, in physical beauty. Like if you think of it from a biological perspective, we're moving into our fertile window. If we want to get pregnant, it can help to be alluring and attractive. So not only may you feel different, but a lot of people notice changes in their skin, in their hair, in their scent. That's a huge one, in the ways that like their partner looks to them or how they look to their partner. There are changes that start here. And so this is really a time to plant your intentions. If we look at the cycle, if we look at cyclical living, the guide here is to plant intentions to get clear on what you want to do in the cycle. Menstruation was a time to cleanse, release, and to receive downloads. You're psychically super open, but it's not necessarily the time to put anything into action. It's time to sit with it. And then as we move into our follicular phase, we start to say, okay, let's say during your bleed, you had this download of like, I would like to start a retreat. I would like to hold a retreat in Mexico. I love Mexico. So this is, so in my follicular phase, I would say, okay, what does that mean? Like, do I need to research a retreat center? Do I need to send out an email to my followers to see who would want to go, engage interest? Like, do I need to talk to other people who have set retreats? Like getting ideas of what you need to do. And also to start socializing if that feels good, making connections. We're very social creatures. Like, embrace that when it feels right in the body. Yeah. And is there anything that you want to say about spring or the follicular phase before I move into ovulation?
So deeply, yes. Okay. I'm just going to give a fun little thing about it. I'm just kind of laughing. We're recording this in February, late February in Asheville. It's been 70 degrees. I like to call it false spring.
It's false spring.
It's false spring because we will get another winter moment. I know we will.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I'm just joking with myself around. Okay, that's a cat. I'm just joking with myself around the end of my bleed and how it'll kind of trickle off for one day and then it'll come back and I'm like, it's false ending. And I'm just laughing. I'm like, oh, this is where we're at. Like, it's like, oh, okay, the bleed ends and you have like kind of like a little, and then it's like comes back just a little bit more. And I'm like, false spring. Oh, those moments. I always have an interesting little pause day before I get one last trickle. And I'm like, oh, false spring. And I'm like, I'm done. Just kidding. I'm like, where's the estrogen? Okay. Yeah, I am literally ready to, like, the second follicular is arriving. I'm ready. I'm like,
for true spring.
I'm like, let's go, true spring. I'm here. I've waited. I've cocooned. I've nourished myself. And then, but sometimes I'll also notice when I don't take those steps to be with myself during my bleed, follicular has an interesting transition for me because it's like there's gotta be that restorativeness that happens while bleeding for me and my body.
So the follicular phase or spring leads into summer. So our ovary, the follicles are starting to develop in the follicular phase. And as they develop, one becomes dominant. And so once this dominant follicle gets big enough, it's producing a lot of estrogen.
Ooh.
And so this sends a signal back up to the brain to release a hormone called LH or luteinizing hormone to start the process of ovulation. So what ovulation is it's actually the egg or the ovum bursting through the wall of the follicle, like Kool-Aid man. Like if you look at an ovary under a microscope, you would see where each ovulation took place. And some people can feel this.
What? I can feel it. I get a weird little sensation.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be painful. Okay. But it's, for some people it is, if they have pain in their body, that does happen, but it's normally not painful. It is just noticed. So this is a sensation called Mittelschmerz. That's a German word, so I'm not saying it perfectly.
I love it.
And it's normally like a dull pain on either your left or right side, or sometimes in the low back.
That's it. Yes. Like it's not a cramp, but it's like a hello.
Yes.
It's like, hi, I'm here. And I feel it on one side of my body.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. So that's Mittelschmerz. About half of cycling humans that I talk to experience it, feel it, and can connect to it. And if you do or you don't, there's no right or wrong way to do it. So the egg bursts out of the ovary and it starts.
I'm sorry, middle schmerz is just taking me. I'm gonna laugh every single time now. It's so good. I'm in middle schmerz. They're like, what's going on? Middle schmerz.
Middle and so the egg bursts out and it starts its journey down the fallopian tube. And if at this point, if there are sperm present, it would be fertilized. If not, the egg would start to break down to be reabsorbed by the body. So the egg or the ovum is actually only available for fertilization for about 12 hours. Like it's a very short window. We've been told that, you can get pregnant any day of your cycle. This is absolutely not true. It's definitely longer than 12 hours because of something I'll talk about later called cervical mucus or cervical fluid. But the egg itself, when it's present, isn't actually available for that long. The body pretty quickly decides what's going to happen.
The body's like, no, we're good. Thank you.
And so right around ovulation, both the time before and the time after, this is where we have the most estrogen in our body. So that like sensation of rising optimism is heightened here, of heightened attractiveness, of heightened energy. Now, as a slight disclaimer, there are some people that don't have the most positive reaction to their own estrogen. And so they might feel the opposite reaction, where around ovulation, they feel a dip. And if that's you, that is okay. Let's reach out to me. Let's chat. Do it. But for the vast majority of people, we are seeing just this rise in energy and optimism. So this is summer. This is when the sun is out for the longest. Your light is the brightest. And really what I talk to people about in this phase is it's about focused intention, because it can be very easy to get a little spun out with all of this energy and to be here and there and here and there. So come back to your intentions that you set in the follicular phase. If I'm trying to set up this retreat, this is when I'm really, charming the retreat center, and I'm sending my emails and I'm recording social media stuff. Like this is when I'm being my most charismatic self. And it's focused. I'm checking in with my intuition, checking in with my body, saying, what is my energy best spent on right now? How can I best use my vital life force energy now? And, sometimes that's still just taking a nap or hanging out. Like it doesn't always have to be like super productive. We're so obsessed with productivity. So like check in with your body. It will tell you. Most of the time, we're excited to do things, to create. Like our body is in creatrix mode. Like, let's do it. Let's go out. Let's dance. Let's feel. Let's expand. Let's journal. Let's make art, all the things. So that's our summer, big and bold and beautiful. Any notes on summer?
I have so many. First of all, as a Leo sun, can confirm vitality. It's the highest peak of summer. Energetically, our womb is our creative space. So we're running creative energy through there all the time, and it's powerful. If our womb can create life on Earth itself, you can, if you're not trying to conceive, use that energy towards manifesting and creating what you want here. And I think that that's so important. But I also want to speak to most of my clients can struggle here a little bit, because this is also the time, because you're so attractive, that you're starting to attract distraction as well. And so saying hello to like coming back to, okay, what's actually my intention? Because, biologically we're trying to procreate and we want to be,
or we're available.
We're available for that. And we want to be conscious of that and be like, oh, okay, cool. Like my body wants to, yeah, that could be quite distracting if you're trying to anchor a creation. And so I teach how to balance the energy of the womb and the creative energy and not leak it out everywhere. Because I used to leak it out everywhere. I didn't have authority over that creative energy because of programming, because of this patriarchal society we live in, because of needing to be attractive to men, because of all of these things. And it's taken me a really long time to finally own it. Like, that egg is mine. And I'm super excited about it. It's amazing. We in female bodies are master creators, and our bodies are so magical. Okay.
Love it. Yeah. Great reminder. The purpose of the menstrual cycle, like, there's so many reasons to have a cycle beyond wanting to get pregnant. Whether or not you ever choose or do conceive and have a child, it is so important to be cycling. Each ovulation is a deposit in your health bank. It is so important for your bone, for your breast, for your heart health. Ovulation is healthy. We want to ovulate. We love it. Our body's here for it. Our body's built for it. We want to ovulate.
Absolutely. It's the same thing as like being in this level of what's coming through is like this depression. When we're not creating what we want to create here on the planet, we can tend to get really like off kiltered and kind of fall into more depressive or like dorsal states of our nervous system because, well, that's trauma, but we'll get into that. But yeah, it's like we want to be creative. And when you're denying your creative life force from doing what it's doing, you can have some problems. You can have some problems. And I'm really seeing that in the world is people are starting to own their creativity again. And it's so nice. I'm liking it. But we're also having to kind of deconstruct these oppressive systems that have told us in female bodies that we have to be one way, which is part of the journey as well.
Beautiful. So far we've talked about estrogen as the predominant hormone. As we move into our next season, our fall or autumn or the luteal phase, progesterone comes onto the scene. And so estrogen is kind of like our sex kitten hormone. Like, it's sexy and fun and flirty. It's often associated with a rise in libido and attractiveness. And then progesterone is like this very nurturing mom genes sort of hormone. This is not my analogy. Do not remember who said it. But I just want to say that I love this. So estrogen is the sex kitten, progesterone is the mom genes. So it's responsible for like a healthy relaxation response, for these like nesting qualities. Like, people will often feel more of a desire to clean or organize or stay in their house and make it really cozy. I'm normally not that neat of a person, but then my luteal phase will run around and I'm like, I need to take everything out of my closet and rearrange it.
Oh, it's where I'm at. Literally right now.
Yes. And so that's that progesterone, because progesterone is extremely important in pregnancy too. It's, if you break down the word progesterone, progestation, without healthy progesterone levels, your body will not maintain a pregnancy. But it's important even if you're not getting pregnant or wanting to get pregnant, for that relaxation response, for healthy sleep, for healthy nervous system function. We love progesterone for healthy thyroid function, all these things. So the first part of the luteal phase, we're moving into autumn. Like, think Halloween. Things might be getting a little spooky. Like, our days are starting to get a little shorter and darker, and we're walking into the dark. Like,
Scorpio season.
this is our wild woman. And so this is normally 10 to 14 days long. So the luteal phase can't be longer than 16 days after you ovulate, without an existing pregnancy. And so it's normally about 2 weeks. The first part can feel very similar to ovulation because you still have these high levels of estrogen. And then as progesterone reaches its peak, about 7 days post ovulation, and then starts to dip, this is where people can experience the symptoms that are grouped in as PMS. So PMS, premenstrual syndrome, has over 150. It's silly. They're like,
your face was so pure.
It's silly. Like, there's over 150 listed symptoms of PMS, and the medical industry was just like, woman problems. We'll like put them all under this name.
Ew, David.
Whereas like there are actually differences that we can like I separate PMS into 4 different like categories. There's the anxiety category, depression, cravings, and then heaviness, bloating type symptoms. And they all have different nutritional deficiencies related with them. So PMS is not normal. It's normalized, but it's not part of a healthy menstrual cycle, so to say. What is normal and healthy is to notice differences in your cycle, to maybe have a slight inwards pull, to maybe notice some differences in your body, to notice things that are cyclical changes that aren't destroying your life.
Amen.
Once it starts to impact your quality of life, this is when you want to really pay attention, heal, reach out for support.
Call her.
Call me, call an acupuncturist, naturopathic medicine, energy healer.
Hello.
We'll
get you right.
The holistic modalities they offer you more options. If you go to your doctor, you will likely be prescribed birth control or an antidepressant, which may be helpful. I'm not discounting that, but if you are looking for really root cause healing, I would suggest that you explore more holistic modalities around nutrition, energy work, focused things, relaxation, all the things.
Just womb informed. Just like, we have trauma information, like we need the womb informed practitioners, because it's really important if you resonate with being in a female body or in a female body, that we have this wisdom that has been kind of taken from us. So
the luteal phase, so it's named after the corpus luteum. After the egg breaks out during ovulation, what's left is the follicle, or the little house for the egg, and that starts to break down and produce progesterone. And so that's what the luteal phase is named after. It's also energetically, in my work, what's this called? Like a telescope? I'm missing the word. I should
wait, hold on. Explain it. We'll get it.
You know, the thing that you look at to like look lower, that's not a microscope. It is a seeing glass into the subconscious.
Oh, okay.
Magnifying glass.
Okay, sure. That's great.
So the luteal phase is a looking glass into the subconscious. It's also a very clear reminder or test of how well we have cared for ourselves in the rest of the cycle. If you have been stressed out, overworked, not eating right, not moving your body, not going outside, you will feel it in the luteal phase. It's going to come for you.
The descent into the darkness.
And so, it can be like experiment with it, like really focus a whole cycle on self-care. Normally it takes about 3 cycles to see big changes in our menstrual cycle. That's how long it normally takes for our actions to show up. But do a little experiment, really focus on self-care for 3 cycles and see if your luteal phase changes. Oh. And when I mentioned the subconscious jumping back, anything that we've pushed down or tried not to think about likes to resurface in the luteal phase. And so this can be an opportunity to look at parts of yourself that you may not love. It's an opportunity to love yourself deeper. It's an opportunity to get a full view of really what makes you you and who you are. This is a time when I will often experience insecurities about my body, my relationship, even my work. It's a time when it's often grief. Like this past cycle for me, I noticed like my mind was wandering. Like I'd be on my computer trying to do things and my mind would wander, and I'd be having these fake conversations with people in my life, or that used to be in my life, that I feel like really hurt me. And in these conversations in my head, I wasn't being very kind. And so I like to think that I am a very kind person.
Can confirm.
Thank you. And so I was like sitting with that and I'm like, oh, this is really interesting that I'm having all of these like fantasies of being mean to people that have hurt me. And so I had to sit with that, like that there is this desire in me to do that, to hurt people that have hurt me.
Yeah.
And then when I sat with that anger, it really turned into grief. Grief about apologies that I will never receive.
Yeah. It's a deep one.
And it's like, how can you hold yourself in those moments when you're seeing things that you've tried to push down and they're coming back up? How can you love yourself in that and just take a look at the complexity of the human that you are? Being a human is so hard, and there is so many things going on, and you can be everything. Like, we like to put ourselves into little boxes of like, I'm a good person, I'm a nice person, I'm a bad person, I guess is the opposite. And it's like, no, let's like step outside of the box and just look at the totality of who you are. And so this is a phase that does not fit easily and kindly into the patriarchy. The patriarchy would like us to show up every day the same, in a quite submissive, attentive, and productive manner. And the luteal phase isn't necessarily a time when that's what your body wants to do, nor should it be. Nor should it be. This is a time that I'm much more likely to snap at people too. Like, my patience is thin. And so, that's just a time when I'm normally like going to back out of some social engagements. Like, sometimes when I'm ovulating, I'll be like, yes, I'll go to that and that and that. And then I get into my luteal phase and I'm like, actually, I need to take a bath. Actually, I need to sit with these thoughts. I need to journal. I need to do breath work. I need to really sit with myself, love myself, feel myself, and just really allow for this integration. But yeah, so similar to the menstrual phase, it's like, find moments where you can embrace your totality, your wild woman, the intuition and the knowledge of your body. Your body is not random. It's not sending you like meaningless clues and instincts. Like, there is such deep wisdom emanating from your womb. Sit with it, even if it's just for a few minutes, some deep belly breathing. Like, there is something in there for you. And be so kind to yourself and so patient in this phase, especially. Always, but especially in this phase.
Yeah.
Like, you need so much love and patience from yourself, and you deserve it.
Thank you so much for that really vulnerable share that really like impacted me in such a way of like validating my own experience of this past luteal cycle. So I just appreciate you bringing words and sharing and just naming it. A lot of us don't have or feel like we don't have the capacity to be with ourselves during this time. We don't have the tools. We haven't been taught how to be with our emotions, how to be with our shadow. We live in a world that categorizes things as good and bad, as if there's a good and a bad. That's also the patriarchy. Good, bad. This is good. There's no such thing. But we do have an internal voice. We do have an internal compass of what feels good and what doesn't. And we know what doesn't feel good. Wanting to hurt someone may feel righteous in the moment, but it doesn't feel good. And I myself have had my own inner anger and rage that has come up recently, and being there to hold space for it and decide to choose love. And also to process the grief that comes.
Yeah. to not push it away, to not say it's bad, but also to be aware of it so that you're not like recklessly hurting others or
Exactly.
yourself.
That's your work. That's the
Mhm.
internal work. And there is a
Mhm.
part of you who didn't get that forgiveness, who deserves it. So her
Mhm.
anger is actually completely righteous and
So
on
valid.
point and
So
valid.
valid.
And the grief is that process of, yeah, I'm never going to get it.
Mhm.
But you'd be surprised.
I mean, not on the physical realm.
Not on
Some of
physical,
these
but
folks have
yes.
passed on.
Yes. Yes. And I definitely will say that sometimes healing things in the astral
Mhm.
is much better.
Yes.
And my dreams are very active with lots of doing the work that we possibly can't do in human form because we
Mhm.
have to have boundaries with people.
Yes.
I have to speak to this for 1 second,
Mhm.
but we during this part of our cycle and maybe during our entire lives might not have the capacity to meet people or go into conflict resolution with everyone, especially if there's deep hurt. And so I always trust that my higher self will bring resolution in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes that's in my dream space. I get to
Mhm.
have words. Too many exes and I just have really fun time healing on the astral, laughing at each other. Yeah, a lot.
Mhm.
But yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Mhm.
I think we have time to talk about. Should we talk about the cervix?
Yeah.
Because I feel like if we talk about a
Mhm.
fertility awareness, that's like we have another
Mhm.
hour.
I would love to do just like a brief
Okay.
what is
Brief,
fertility awareness.
let's do it.
But before I do that, so the luteal phase is our
Oh,
autumn,
we
our fall.
gotta finish this up.
I just realized I didn't mention this.
Okay.
So this is the time that you're reaping what you've sowed. You know, we are harvesting our plants, our food, and we're saving them for winter. We're preserving them. So this is a time to really set yourself up for a restorative, safe bleed, to make your space really cozy and clean, to maybe like prepare ahead of time some meals or some recipes. Yeah, just to support yourself. And like you were saying, conflict resolution. A lot of things can come up in the luteal phase, but that's not always the best time to actually resolve the conflict. I think that that's the best time to sit with it and to like love yourself and to feel through it. But our communication is actually the clearest in our follicular and our ovulatory phases. So, you know, cyclical living saying maybe, you know, I'm pretty deep into my luteal phase and I'm in my feels. And right now is not the best time for me to have this emotionally charged conversation. Like maybe I'm going to wait until after I've bled. Maybe there's some insight for me that I'll receive during my bleed.
I
So
love
everything
that
leads
so
into each other,
much.
circles around, and it starts over and over and over and again. Mhm.
I want to say one thing about menstruation that's coming up is that I talked to a little tiny bit about the privilege of being able to slow down. I know that we live in a place where we need to take care of our basic and essential needs, and sometimes that means working.
Mhm.
The one thing that I had shifted and I continue to honor, because I like to take baby steps. I don't think that we need to like block off months, but sometimes that works for some people. They like to take it and they're like, I need a year to heal, which actually I think that's what I did. But I have this agreement with myself that on the first day I bleed, I take at least a half a day. Yeah. Like, so that's my bare minimum of like, okay, when I'm opening to bleeding, that I don't do client calls on that day. I will cancel them. It's something that I let my clients know, like this is bleed day, and
Which empowers them.
because I don't necessarily have the capacity. I'm actually super psychic, so honestly, I should be doing sessions during my bleed, and I sometimes do. But day one, my heaviest bleed day, I'm like, nope, not going to happen. And that's pretty much my boundary with it. And sometimes I do have a little energy where I find when I'm bleeding, I actually want to connect, but with other bleeding women. I want to be in that red tent environment. So I think for a long time, I wanted to have that safety and connection while I was bleeding, because that's what was missing. And that grief of like, be alone, like be internal really stressed me out because I was like, I actually want to share
Yeah.
all of the medicine that's pouring through us together.
Yes.
And so I noticed that there's always this kind of longing during my bleed to be with sisters.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't want to like, I want to be with my people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Red tent, which we mentioned, is historically across various civilizations, women would bleed together normally with the new moon, and they would actually go into a tent and they would share stories and sing, and they wouldn't need to do any housework, very minimal cooking, if any. Like they get to chill and connect. And, they have psychic dreams, which in various indigenous traditions were used to actually make the decisions for the tribes, acknowledging the power and the psychic ability of women at their bleed time. So red tent is super powerful. Love it.
Miss it a few times. Remind me to give you the book if you're interested in this kind of deep medicine. There's a book called Ode to Manoa, which is about Crete culture, Crete, and I am definitely going to send that with you home tonight.
Love it. I will read it.
It talks about they have an amazing little like bleeding grotto. And I'm like,
Ooh.
I want to be there and put my blood into the grotto. Like, I want to do that so badly.
Yeah.
It's like this spa, essentially.
No.
And I'm like, this is where I want to go. So eventually on this planet, we'll have bleeding spas.
Maybe that's part of what we're going to do.
Oh, yeah. We should make one.
So this is a description of a normal, healthy, ovulatory menstrual cycle that we've just talked about with the 4 phases. This is not what happens when you are on hormonal birth control. And so based on the method and your body, most of the methods are designed to stop ovulation. So you have more or less a stagnant, like you're taking the pill, for example, it's giving you that same dose of a synthetic estrogen and a synthetic progesterone. And so it's keeping it very steady until you take your break for your pill bleed, and then you take your sugar pill or stop taking it, and then what it is there on the endometrium will shed. So when I learned about the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, I decided to get off of hormonal birth control, because I did not know that there were 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. And I had been on hormonal birth control for so long that I didn't remember what it felt like to ovulate. I didn't remember what it felt like to be in these different cycles. And at the time when I learned this information, I wasn't even, sexually active. So I was like, why am I on this? Because I was taught at a young age that, like, if you are responsible, you will be on hormonal birth control.
Yep.
That it is the only option. So I did a little experiment. And at the time I had an IUD. I've used lots of different methods throughout my lifespan.
I was like, how old were you with an IUD?
That was my 3rd IUD. And I was 22.
Wow.
And so I got that IUD out and drank a bunch of ceremonial cacao.
Your initiation started that day.
Well, because there can be a detox process.
Yes.
And it can feel very destabilizing, both emotionally and physically, as your body relearns how to ovulate and cycle, which it's totally possible and capable of doing. So ceremonial cacao was super important for me in my detox process. But shortly after I got off, I got into a relationship, and I was like, oh, snap. Like, I got off of hormonal birth control. Like, what am I going to do? So if you find yourself in a similar position, I would like to just give a brief introduction to something called fertility awareness. So this is primarily what I teach. This is what I went to graduate school for, was to learn how to really do this and do this well. So fertility awareness is a method of reading your body's fertility indicators, primarily your cervical fluid and your basal body temperature. Also, optional ones are your cervical position, middle schmerz, mood changes, libido changes, vulva engorgement. There's a few things that we pay attention to tell us when we're fertile and when we're not. And so you're fertile only about 6 days in each cycle. Sometimes our fertile window with fertility awareness is a bit longer than that because we like to lean towards caution if you are trying to avoid pregnancy. But you don't need to be actively avoiding pregnancy every single day of your cycle.
Every single day of your life.
Every single day of your life with this constant, there's so much fear.
It's resistance and fear of like, I'm going to get, oh my gosh, the stress it puts on women.
Yes.
It's exhausting.
So fertility awareness is an umbrella term for many different methods, each with different instructions and efficacies. That is important. So oftentimes when I mention to people that I use fertility awareness, they think that I am talking about the rhythm method, which is a method from the 1930s from the Catholic Church that says basically that all women ovulate on day 14. So they're, fertile from day 9 to 19, or sometimes there's a little bit of a calculation in there to change those numbers. But basically it is an oversimplification. Your ovulation is not happening on the same day each cycle. It changes based on stress, nutrition, the moon, your body's intuitive wisdom. Like it moves each cycle. It's
Body
not
knows.
a fixed thing.
She freaking knows the
She
peak
knows.
point.
Mm-hmm.
She knows.
Mm-hmm. And so there are lots of different methods out there. So the rhythm method's one of them. It works for some folks, but it does have a much lower efficacy than symptothermal methods, which is what I was talking about with the cervical fluid and your basal body temperature. And so those, when you're avoiding pregnancy, have an efficacy of between, based on the method, normally 85 to 99.6% effective. And so you get that highest efficacy by choosing a symptothermal method, one that's using temperature and cervical mucus and working with a trained instructor. There are only a few schools in the entire world that train instructors. My program was a 2-year intensive program that takes most people 3 to 5 years to complete. So look into your instructors that you are learning from. You want someone who has studied, or someone that you intuitively trust your body. So with that, just know, I do want to keep this short, but there are highly effective methods of preventing pregnancy that are not hormonal birth control. And so you'll have a fertile window each cycle. And then in that cycle, you can either abstain from penis and vagina sex, and you can explore the exciting world of non-penetrative sex, which is often the best part of sex. Like,
yes,
you can get incredibly creative,
Mhm.
or you use barriers like condoms, diaphragms, cervical caps, the pull-out method in combination with any of those. So you have so many options that are not hormonal. And with that, fear can come up because your doctor may not have that information for you. If you Google it, you might see some scary statistics. So the world is changing. People are awakening. So many people are like, I wonder what my body feels like off of birth control, but I don't want to get pregnant. So just know that there are highly effective methods. The one that I teach is called Justice. I love it. One that I'm trained in. It's a symptothermal method of fertility awareness. They exist. They're out there. They can also help you get pregnant if that is your intention, or just to learn about your body, track your fertile indicators, work on things like painful periods, PMS. There's so many wonderful things to cycle tracking.
Hold on, I'm feeling an energy like that. I've been working out of my heart moving as I've been massaging my chest. I'm like, what was I gonna ask you? Oh, do you support people in that detoxification of birth control?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I'm thinking of 20 people listening to this podcast who have asked me or have been curious about this experience. And I had a dear, one of my dearest sisters, remove her IUD and had such a difficult time. Yeah, like emotionally and just like physically. And it just was a challenge for her. And before we make these decisions, we want the information, but we also need support.
Yes.
If you have the availability to get support from other women who have done this before, do it. You don't have to do everything on your own. I think we are so like independent and amazing as women, but like hormones are a big deal. They run this body.
Mhm.
So get some support, and Annalise is just absolutely incredible. And I
Mhm.
highly, highly recommend, deeply
Mhm.
recommend.
While you can come off of hormonal birth control at any time in your life, it is helpful to have a plan, both on how you are going to support your body and how you are going to reach your reproductive goals. If you are wanting to get pregnant, I suggest coming off of hormonal birth control at least 6 months before trying to get pregnant. My school actually told me up to 2 years before trying to get pregnant, which is a long time. So many people come off of hormonal birth control and want to get pregnant right away. But pregnancy and birth and breastfeeding is a marathon, and you want to go into it as healthy as humanly possible, with your body as prepared as possible. So give yourself time, plan ahead when possible. If you're coming off of hormonal birth control, I normally have people planning what they're going to do to support their body 3 months before. We start working on gut health, on liver detoxification, on, your energetics, your spiritual work, your, feminine embodiment practice, whatever that means to you before. Mhm. But you can also do them after or during, depending on your life circumstances.
I love that.
Mhm.
I love that so much. You and I were walking near a river, because that's what we do.
We do.
We walk near rivers. And you had told me something that I thought was so interesting. You were like, it takes the body like 2 years to build up the resources in order to have a healthy pregnancy. And that's not always accurate for everyone.
Mhm.
But can you speak a little bit into that, just really briefly, about like building? I mean, I know you just kind of did, but building up our body's capacity to create life. Like, it doesn't just happen. I had lost a pregnancy, and I'll tell you, it's because I don't know the exact answer, but when you had said that to me, I realized I had no nutritional base to stand on, and I had
Mhm.
been coming off of Adderall and caffeine. Like, my body's like, "Yeah, we don't have the energy to sustain this."
Mhm.
So I'd love you to speak into that for just
Yeah, I'm happy
bit.
to. First thing that I want to mention around pregnancy loss is, even if your body isn't super healthy as you want to be, we can be so fixated on perfection. Losing a pregnancy is not your fault. Miscarriage is incredibly common, especially in that first trimester, at no fault to you. Sometimes the body decides that this exact sperm and egg combination, it's not even your body, it's the combination. Sometimes a blighted ovum. There's things that can go on where the body's like, oh, this actually isn't worth putting our resources into, this exact combination at this exact time. If you have lost a pregnancy, it's not your fault. There's so much guilt and blame. So yeah, just honoring that for a moment. And yeah, preparing for pregnancy does not mean perfection. It means focused intention. We can only do the best that we can do. We often believe that we can actually reach perfection.
And then spirit's like, die, no, you're pregnant. Oh no, it's like, I'm gonna mentally prepare for my pregnancy. We're such perfectionists.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And that perfectionist, like, it can lead into some things that are harmful to the body.
Yeah.
Disordered eating is huge. And like, as women, as cyclical beings, so many things. But preparing for pregnancy, this is both physically in the body, like you want to eat a very nutrient dense diet, like eliminating or lowering processed foods and adding in things that look like what they look like in nature. Fruits, vegetables, meat, organ meats, oysters, mushrooms, all sorts of things, whatever works for your body. We love to see it. You know what works well in your body. You have that capacity to tap in. Supporting your gut with things like probiotics, lowering stress, addressing any health concerns while they're there, if they're there, supporting your liver through detoxification herbs, lowering toxins, and then taking time to prepare spiritually, calling in that life, asking them what you need to prepare for their arrival. Sometimes this is financial. Like babies are expensive. Like they're not cheap. Like in the United States where we are, it's not even cheap to give birth. Like
You can't even give birth in North Carolina in your house. It's actually kind of
You
absurd.
can.
You can,
You
but
just
you
can't
can't
have a
be
midwife.
You can't have a midwife.
Mhm.
I'm raising concerns.
We're working on it.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
Mhm. But so sometimes that means, getting your finances in order. What do you need to support this child that you're bringing earthside? Sometimes this means increasing your education around the birth process, researching different birthing techniques, doulas, midwives, where or how you'd like to give birth, how or why other people, not why, but how or where other people have given birth. Maybe it's reading about parenting techniques, about sleep techniques. Sometimes it's addressing ancestral trauma.
That's when you call me. We're gonna clear up
Mm-hmm.
the lines.
Because you were born with about 400,000 eggs or ovum, or not ovums yet, but the primordial follicles, the things that have the capacity to grow into eggs in your body in conception. So these are in you while you are a baby inside of your mother. And so you existed as one of those eggs energetically, physically in your grandmother.
God, it's so cool.
Like we're passing this stuff down. We are all connected through the womb. So before conception, if you have the time and the spaciousness to plan, look at what's there. What have I inherited from my female ancestors? What do I want to pass on? And what do I say, actually, this ends with me?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to release this belief, desire, condition, whatever's going on. Like there are so many things that we can do. Like pregnancy isn't something that necessarily just happens. Like sometimes it does, but it's such an intentional, spiritual, momentous thing. And it deserves, like, how long do you prepare a wedding for? Like most people plan their weddings like several years in advance, at least one or two.
Yeah.
Like you should be giving the same amount of, not should, but you can give the same amount of energy and attention and preparation to this life that you are bringing earthside.
It's literal conscious conception,
Mhm.
and there's a lot involved. And yeah, I think it's important as we kind of open ourselves to who we are as people to realize like we're bringing in these little beings that are going to mirror us all of our shit. So and if your nervous system isn't regulated enough, a lot of that too is nervous system work. And you don't have the information, you don't have the tools. Like I noticed myself, I'm not in a space of conceiving a physical child, but I noticed my own generational trauma with my cats. They piss me off, and I'm like, hey, you cannot do this to them. You can't yell. You have to like breathe, because as a kid I was yelled at. So I'm like, okay. So I'm doing a lot of work preconception. I feel like preconception really starts when you become conscious of your stuff. Like if you have a desire to be a mother, and for some people we don't actually have that opportunity. Some of us had kids before we became conscious to our shit. I mean, it's all timing, and I think it's all happening in divine timing. So there's no shame in any way, shape, or form. No. At all.
It all happens as it's meant to.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking to that. I think that's really, really important and something that you support with. Oh my gosh.
Love it.
Let's end with the cervix.
Let's talk about
something that I was afraid of my whole life.
Why were you afraid of? So before I ask that, the cervix is the lower part of the uterus that protrudes into the vagina. If you were to stick your longest finger into your vagina and feel along the wall, you would feel it protruding, and it would feel like a little ball. Sometimes it's hard, like the tip of your nose, and sometimes it's soft, like your bottom lip, but it's always there. It opens for menstruation, for blood to come through. It also opens for cervical mucus or cervical fluid in the follicular and ovulatory phases. And that opening is very, very slight, and it opens a lot if you are to give vaginal birth.
A lot. It's our little plug. It's like how water doesn't get into our freaking vagina when we're in a pool.
Yes.
Okay, like this is serious. It's there.
Protects the uterus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a protection. And it's also, where our nervous system as a female body ends, all the nerve endings. It's a sensitive place. Sometimes during penetrative sex, we can feel that.
Oh yeah.
We can
certain positions will feel better at certain parts of the month. Yeah.
And there have been things, I've never had one, called cervical orgasms. Haven't experienced that, but I think it takes a deep presence and
so many types of orgasms.
I know there are really so many types. But yeah, the cervix is a really magical place that,
if that's true, why were you afraid of it?
Yeah, come ringing like that. I related the cervix with pain. And I think there was a lot of fear on me as a little girl around opening for birth, being opened. And so this is what I'll relate it to. Having kind of invasive pap smears without kind of consent or regulation, and having my cervix touched without my consent.
Yeah. It's like you said yes, but your body
said no. Yeah. It traumatized me. And also, having sex where, my body was like, nope, this doesn't feel good. And not having a voice, not having that, like being able to speak on that until now that I'm 29, I can. And like, you just hit my cervix with your whatever tool you're using. And so, yeah, I was afraid of it. And so when it came to fertility tracking, I'm like, I'm not going to touch that because when it was touched in the past, it was via a pap smear and they were really uncomfortable. Yeah. And like, as I talk about it, my legs are like,
I'm getting sweaty.
Why is it the pap smear that really gets us? Because the cervix is the portal to the energy body. If our womb is where we are planting the egg, and we have literally a spirit able to transcend into our body through this egg, the cervix is the gatekeeper. And of course I was afraid of it. I was like, I'm afraid of my own power. Like, what? Yeah. So let's talk about the cervix.
So the cervix moves throughout your cycle. It hardens and softens, like I talked about, like your nose or your bottom lip. It moves so that it's higher and harder to reach, or lower and easier to reach. And the Oz, or the opening, will open and close throughout the cycle. This is all happening under the influence of a hormone called relaxin, which does exactly what it sounds like. It relaxes the muscles and creates some change. And so these are often cyclical changes. And so that's what really will affect during penetrative sex. If certain positions feel good or bad at certain points of the cycle, it's likely that your cervix is harder, softer, higher, lower. It's moved slightly and it's changing pleasure and the angle of penetration. And so, yeah, the cervix is also what people are checking during a pap smear, where they're checking for normal or abnormal cells around the side and the inside of the cervix, because there's so much cell turnover here. Like our cervix is constantly regenerating itself. And so they're able to check what's going on there. Energetically, yeah, it's a huge source of power, of opening, of connection to the earth, the portal that life comes through during a vaginal birth. And when I was in India, one of my teachers told me, we talk about the root chakra or Muladhara as starting at the bottom of the tailbone. And my teacher told me, no, in a female body, it's actually the cervix. That's your Muladhara. That's your root chakra that connects you to the earth, to your physical body, to your ancestors. Of course.
Duh. Like, okay. This was mind-blowing to me. My psychic training and most of my experience in meditative spaces has been grounding through the base of our spine. It didn't hit me until I had a female mentor tell me to ground my energy through the cervix, I cried. I had never felt so connected to the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Female bodies ground their energy differently than male bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And we have yoga and we have meditation and we have mindfulness created through the minds of men.
Mm-hmm.
And that works for them.
Mhm.
It doesn't always work for female bodies. And so when I teach grounding and energetics, I'm teaching to a female body.
Mm-hmm.
We have enough male teaching. We ground the cervix energetically, and we ground the ovaries, and we ground the womb.
Ooh.
And we connect it down through the earth.
Yeah.
And that way our energy has a place to go because it's powerful. We need to feel it anchored here. And so I appreciate your Indian teacher saying that and just affirming that, because yes, the base of our entire nervous system, I can't scientifically prove it. I just know based on my own experience with my body. Maybe you feel, but there would be a disconnect with grounding through my spine. I was like, I feel like it,
Yeah.
okay, yes, there is the base of your spine, which is like a sensitive spot of your nervous system, and you can ground through there,
Yeah,
but
fascia and stuff.
yeah, I didn't feel energetically grounded until I grounded my cervix. Yeah. And I got consent from my yoni to enter into me to ground my cervix, which is a whole nother activation.
Energetic consent.
Energetic consent.
Do you know how to check in with your body to get consent?
Exactly.
For yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I could do a whole podcast episode on consent, and especially when we're using toys or yoni eggs or energy or whatnot. Like, this is a sensitive space. And this leads me into the what I wanted to share with you, that you were like, wait till we share the podcast. So I recently, well, long story short, I'm actually getting divorced. So my health insurance is going to be changing. And I was like, okay, let me take care of my body. And as somebody who is like really holistic, like the doctor's office still has an edge for me. I've had experiences where my voice wasn't heard and where I experienced pain. So I wanted to come to this appointment, which was going to be a pap smear, which I knew was going to have a little bit of activation or a lot of activation in my body, because I'm like, ooh, that's my sensitive spots. And I want to be as informed as I can. So I go to this appointment and I'm in such a good place. Like, it was such a homecoming in a sense of knowing and trusting my body to lead, asking for what I need. Long story short, I was sitting in the office and the power went off as I was grounding my like cervix. And I said, ha 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 ha. I was like, energy work. So literally the power went out in the building because I know. Anyway. And so I was just doing what I know. I was using my tools. I was grounding my energy. I was using amusement. I was laughing. I was resourcing, like, to find a space in my doctor's office where I was like, okay, find a point to look at that makes you feel safe. There was this little sailboat sunset picture, because doctor's offices don't have fucking windows. And it's actually kind of traumatic. I was in a dark room, sterile. Literally a dark room, no lights, no windows. And I was just
didn't get the lights back on?
It took a while. And then they're like, oh, we wanted to check on you. And I was just cackling to myself because I was like, 2 years ago, I would have had a panic attack. Yeah. And I was like, I'm sitting in the dark. I'm chill.
Sitting in the dark, looking at a sailboat, doing some conscious breathing.
I was just fucking laughing my ass off because I was like, the mind wants... I normally would neuroset that as being trauma or something's wrong or I shouldn't be here. Yeah. And I was just like, this is fucking hilarious. Of course the power is going to go out, but I'm noticing that I'm okay. I'm regulated. My window is good. I'm great. If I need to leave, I'll leave anyway. It's a long story. So I get on the table. I ask my body for consent. So what I do before the pap smear is I start to warm up my hands and I actually start to massage my labia. I start to say hello to this beautiful divine pussy because I'm like, hey, babe, I'm letting you know with consent And with this information that we're having a procedure done that you might find uncomfortable. And I want to know that I'm here for you, like talking to my body as if it's a child, because it's a baby. I love this thing. And letting like informing my body every step of the way. This is what's going to happen. What do you need? And my body spoke back to me. And my body's like, I'm a little scared. I said, I can honor that. What do you need to make you feel safe? Can you play my grandmother music? And I said, yes. And then there's a part of me that hit shame. I was like, no, we're in a doctor's office. Like, we can't just play music. And I was like, yes, we fucking can. So I just told my doctor, who's actually incredible, a woman. She was really sweet and so consenting and like,
Love it.
Had a soft touch and let me know every step of the way.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm going to play some music. Is that okay? And she's like, sure. I love how aware you are. I'm like, what is this?
Yes.
I had such a good experience, and the PAP was uncomfortable, but I'd warmed myself up a little bit. I'd taken care of my body, and it was over. And I realized in this moment, I had like this graduation experience. And I was like, holy shit. I've done so much work on myself.
Yeah.
Because though our system is fucked in a lot of ways, we still have to advocate and take care of our health. And it's important to get a pap smear every 3 years. At least for me, I needed to know, is there something wrong with me? It helps me with my mental. And I can't remember what I was going to tell you about it. That was just so funny. But I thought of you in these moments. Oh, this is what I wanted to tell you. What made me feel safe, because I had this picture that touched to my cervix. We call it a picture, but it's a story. I had this story that touched to my cervix always equals pain. I was like, Annalise touches her cervix like every day. Maybe not every day, but you have. And it inspired me to relax.
Aww. And
And I was like, if she can do it, I had this thing that my cervix wasn't allowed to be touched. And I was like, girl, your cervix can be touched. I was like, you're going to be okay. So I was able to relax. And the doctor was so sweet. She actually put her hand right here in my space. And she's like, breathe into this point. And breath work got me through because it helped me to relax.
Yeah.
Oh, so
I
good.
love that. Ask for what you need. Use your tools. Your healthcare providers are there to support you. And if they are not working with you, get a new doctor.
Please.
You always have that option. So please do what you need to do. I love that. You got the music, the massage. We're acknowledging what was working for you with your doctor. Like,
So
yes,
yummy.
yes. Ways to work with your doctor. Often we put our physicians on a pedestal and we're like, they're in a power position. I cannot question them. I cannot disrupt them, all these things. And it's like, no, they are there to support you, to work with you. If they're not, get a new doctor.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to know what helped me to heal this,
What helped you?
medicine is a business. So you're paying them. So you're okay to ask for what you need. And I know that's really hard for people with trauma. It's really hard to speak up for your needs. And it took me a really long time. My background, I was a military spouse, and I used to because you get nothing done in military system. I'd be like, we're doing blood work. And I'm like, that's what's happening. And I trained myself to advocate for my needs, because that's so, so important in this system. And of course, I intuitively can select my doctors now. So I was like, this is the one for me.
And if you think that you are going to have some difficulty advocating for yourself, you can bring an advocate, a friend, a family member. You can hire advocates now, for people to come with you. That is totally within your rights. They can stay in the room with you. Do what you gotta do. Empower yourself. Have support when you need it. You're so worthy of support.
Truly. One of my the first embodiment program that I did was with a one-on-one coach. And I loved her because she was so eccentric in the way of her femininity. But it's almost like we needed it, because it's she'd be like, I'm wearing my pajamas. I'm bringing a weighted blanket. I have a heating pad. I'm going into the doctor's office. And she really inspired me to be that woman. Be that woman who shows other women it's safe to say what you need to say.
Mm-hmm.
Be that woman. I had a shame come up when I was like, I'm going to play music in here. Am I allowed? Oh. And then I was like, your music is gorgeous. It's going to relax everyone in the space, but like, it's fine. You're going to be okay. So it's really like building that capacity, and having that capacity just helps me to move through life. And that's why embodiment is so important to me. We're so sensitive. We have to be able to move through what's present here. And these systems they're changing, but they haven't come into the full safe trauma informed spaces that we really need. So we have to learn how to speak up for our needs and advocate for ourselves the best we can. And I know that I want to name that's a privilege that I have being in a white body. Like for sure being a white woman is like being heard and fuck. I wish things would change faster, but I want to be able to break down these systems that hurt us. And I feel like I'm trying to do that by advocating for my needs in these spaces so that doctors can have that exchange of like, oh, okay, cool. She's neutral. I feel like I'm training them. She's like, you're so healthy and in your body. I'm like, years of work. Years of work. Definitely
took a while to get here.
Years of work. But it's also a healing for both parties, which is really cool. Okay. Glad I got that out. Thanks for
that was beautiful.
teaching me my cervix is safe to touch.
So much growth in the stories that you've shared, both in like, healing painful periods and learning to accept neutrality or even pleasure in your cervix. Cervical orgasms.
I don't have those, but we'll get there.
I mean, I wouldn't expect to have those during a PAP, but like the neutrality.
What if you could have a cervical orgasm?
I'm sure someone can.
There's an actual book too, if you are trying to conceive, called Orgasmic Birth. Look it up. Okay, but you can technically, because there are sensation points, have an orgasm, but probably not during a PAP because there's this level of relaxation.
It's not a very sexy place.
Yeah, it's like you need to have safety and relaxation, and you need to be able to be in your body. There's and arousal. So I aroused myself a little bit before because I was like, I'm not gonna let it go and dry. And even with lube, you want to get it takes
the openness of the muscles.
The openness of the muscles, especially before
the elasticity of the muscles.
And I was like, oh, should I just pop an orgasm off in here? I was like, I don't have time, but I should have had an orgasm before I left. Ooh, that would have been a great idea. Next time. 3 years from now, watch me have a real yummy orgasm before I go to the doctor. They're like, wow, you're so glowing. And I'm like, yes, thank you. Okay, my love. That was so informative. And I just want to thank you for your wisdom. I want to thank you for taking the time to study this and relay this information, because that doesn't go unnoticed by me. That 2 years of intensive training, you're not just like talking out of you embody it and you do it. And that's what's so important to me about, first of all, everyone in my life, but especially this podcast, is bringing the people who embody what they're saying and what they're teaching. And you do that. I see you in that. You are fertility awareness.
I am cyclical.
If people want to connect with you, ooh, I am cyclical. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, my business is called Mystic Feminine Fertility. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and Google and YouTube. mysticfemininefertility.com. All my handles on social media are Mystic Feminine Fertility. I offer one-on-one menstrual charting mentorships. I offer group courses to learn to prevent pregnancy with fertility awareness. I offer donation-based classes that happen twice a month. I offer drop-in charting circles. If you're charting and you want me to take a look at your chart, I got ebooks about coming off of hormonal birth control. I have a free ebook about what is fertility awareness. I have a free mini course about charting. A huge wealth of resources and information for any budget. So check out social media and my website.
Guys, just do it.
Just do it.
Well, let's end this here with a deep breath. And a noise.
Ah.
Thank you for enjoy your journey.
You've been listening to Hi Havingness, the podcast. I'm your host, Alexandria Kenyon. If you want to connect with me more, you can visit my website, alexandriakenyon.com, or send me a DM on Instagram, alexandria.kenyon. Enjoy your journey.